A new Cold War is unfolding. NATO is expanding like never before. Russia is at the gates and global security hangs in the balance. From the ashes of World War II to the battlefields of Ukraine, this is the untold story of the world's most powerful alliance and why the next war may already be here. I'm Matthew, and this is StatesWire, your trusted source for urgent developments from around the globe. In a world shaped by war and peace, alliances define the course of history. Among the most influential stands NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Born out of the Cold War, NATO has evolved into a core protector of global security, democratic values, and collective freedom. This documentary explores NATO's forces, impact, rights, responsibilities, and role in modern geopolitics. In the wake of World War II, 1949 marked the beginning of a new chapter, the formation of NATO. In the aftermath of World War II, Europe lay in ruins. Cities were destroyed, economies had collapsed, and millions of lives were shattered. While the war had ended, peace remained fragile, and a new threat was rising from the east. The Soviet Union, once a wartime ally of the West, began asserting control over Eastern Europe. Communist regimes took hold in countries like Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Hungary. Western democracies feared the spread of Soviet influence across the rest of Europe. To confront this threat, 12 nations joined hands to form a defensive alliance. On April 4, 1949, the North Atlantic Treaty was signed in Washington, D.C. The founding members were the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Canada, Italy, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Denmark, Norway, Portugal, and Iceland. These countries agreed that an armed attack against one of them would be treated as an attack against all, a principle enshrined in Article 5 of the treaty. This collective defense pact was unlike anything the world had seen. It was a strategic and moral commitment to mutual protection. Two key figures led this historic moment: President Harry S. Truman, who represented the United States, and Lord Ismay, who became NATO's first Secretary General. He famously described NATO's mission as to keep the Russians out, the Americans in, and the Germans down. Thus began the NATO alliance, built not just on military strength, but on unity, shared values, and a vision to defend peace in a divided world. As Cold War tensions deepened between East and West, NATO expanded its reach between 1952 and 1982, reinforcing its eastern and southern flanks to counter Soviet influence. Throughout this three-decade period, the Cold War gave rise to several moments of extreme tension that brought the world dangerously close to full-scale conflict. One such moment was the Berlin Crisis of 1961. At the height of East-West rivalry, the Soviet-backed East German government abruptly constructed the Berlin Wall, a concrete barrier that split the city in two. Its purpose was to stop the mass exodus of people from communist East Berlin to democratic West Berlin. The wall became a powerful symbol of division, not just in Germany, but of the ideological split between East and West. Then, in October 1962, came the Cuban Missile Crisis, the most perilous standoff of the Cold War. The United States discovered that the Soviet Union was secretly installing nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles off the American coast. For 13 days, the world stood on the edge of nuclear war as both sides prepared for possible military confrontation. Eventually, through back-channel diplomacy, the Soviets agreed to withdraw the missiles, and catastrophe was narrowly avoided. Later, in 1968, the world witnessed the Prague Spring. In Czechoslovakia, a wave of democratic reform was initiated by the country's leadership, aiming to grant greater freedom of speech, press, and political participation. But these changes alarmed the Soviet Union. In response, Soviet tanks rolled into Prague, crushing the peaceful movement and reposing strict communist control. The invasion sent a clear message: the Soviet Union would not tolerate democratic reform within its sphere of influence. Although NATO never engaged in direct military conflict during these crises, its unified presence and constant preparedness played a critical role in containing tensions. The alliance remained watchful, resilient, and determined to protect the balance of power in Europe. With the Cold War over and the Soviet Union dissolved, NATO entered a new era, one that demanded a complete redefinition of its mission and purpose in the 1990s. The end of the Cold War marked a turning point for NATO. In 1989, the world watched as the Berlin Wall fell, a symbol of communism and division crumbling before the eyes of history. Within just 2 years, in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, ending the ideological rivalry that had shaped NATO's entire existence. With its original purpose containing Soviet aggression now gone, NATO faced an identity crisis, but rather than dissolving, the alliance chose to evolve. Throughout the 1990s, NATO redefined itself, shifting from a Cold War defense pact into a forward-looking force for peace, stability, and democracy. One of the most significant changes came in 1999, when three former Warsaw Pact countries, the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland, officially joined NATO. These nations, once under Soviet influence, now sought integration with the West, protection under NATO's umbrella, and a path to democratic reform. This expansion showed NATO's new role, building bridges with former adversaries and extending stability across Central and Eastern Europe. At the same time, NATO undertook military operations for the first time in its history, not in response to a Soviet invasion, but as part of peacekeeping efforts in the Balkans. In 1995, NATO launched an air campaign and deployed peacekeeping forces in Bosnia and Herzegovina, helping to end a brutal civil war fueled by ethnic tensions. Then, in 1999, NATO intervened again in the Kosovo conflict, conducting a 78-day air campaign to stop ethnic cleansing by Serbian forces against Albanian civilians. These operations marked a historic shift. NATO was no longer just a passive alliance waiting for war. It had become an active stabilizer, willing to take action to prevent humanitarian disasters and protect European security. This decade transformed NATO into more than a military shield. It became a political and moral force committed to peace, democratic values, and international cooperation in the post-Cold War world. In the wake of the September 11th attacks, NATO entered a new era, one defined by the global fight against terrorism and the challenges of asymmetric warfare. The morning of September 11th, 2001 changed the world forever. After the United States was struck by the deadliest terrorist attacks in its history, NATO made an unprecedented move. It invoked Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty for the very first time. That meant an attack on one was an attack on all. This historic moment marked NATO's entry into a new kind of warfare, one not against a nation, but against global terrorism. In 2003, NATO took command of the International Security Assistance Force, ISAF, in Afghanistan. This was the largest military operation in NATO's history. Over 130,000 troops from more than 50 countries participated at its peak. The mission aimed to defeat terrorist networks, stabilize the Afghan government, and build national security forces. NATO remained active in Afghanistan until 2014 and continued providing support afterward through a non-combat mission. But NATO's role in the war on terror didn't stop there. In Iraq, NATO provided critical support by training and equipping Iraqi security forces after the fall of Saddam Hussein. These efforts aimed to prevent the resurgence of extremist groups and support democratic reconstruction. NATO also expanded its operations to the seas. It launched counter-piracy patrols off the coast of Somalia and the Horn of Africa, protecting global shipping lanes from maritime threats. In Europe, NATO reinforced its commitment to Allied airspace. It began Baltic air policing, where NATO fighter jets regularly patrol and defend the skies over Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, former Soviet republics now part of the alliance and strategically close to Russia. This era showcased NATO's ability to adapt beyond traditional warfare. It evolved into a multi-dimensional alliance, capable of addressing asymmetric threats like terrorism, piracy, cyber attacks, and state instability. It was a powerful reminder that NATO's purpose had grown beyond defending borders. It was now defending peace and stability on a global scale. Between 2004 and 2020, NATO underwent its most significant phase of modern expansion, welcoming new members, reinforcing its eastern borders, and responding to an increasingly assertive Russia. The early 21st century marked a bold new era for NATO. As former communist nations transitioned to democracy and sought greater security, NATO opened its doors wider than ever before. In 2004, NATO underwent its largest single expansion since its founding. 7 new countries became members: Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia. These nations, once under Soviet control or influence, saw NATO membership as a gateway to peace, stability, and integration with the Western world. It was a powerful symbol of how far Europe had come since the Cold War. The expansion didn't stop there. In 2009, Albania and Croatia joined. In 2017, Montenegro became a member, and in 2020, North Macedonia completed its accession. This wave of additions strengthened NATO's footprint across Central, Eastern, and Southeastern Europe. But with expansion came new challenges. In 2008, Russia launched a military invasion of Georgia, targeting the breakaway regions of Abkhazia and South Ossetia. Then in 2014, Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine, a move widely condemned by the international community. These acts of aggression alarmed NATO and reshaped its defense strategy. In response, NATO shifted from deterrence to direct defense. It deployed forward-positioned multinational troops in Poland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, creating a visible and ready force near Russia's borders. The message was clear: NATO would defend every inch of its territory. This era of expansion and resistance underscored NATO's dual role: a welcoming alliance for aspiring democracies and a strong shield against threats from the East. Beginning in 2022, Russia's invasion of Ukraine triggered a seismic shift in European security, paving the way way for NATO's renewed urgency and the historic expansion to include Finland and Sweden. In February 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, shattering decades of relative peace in Europe and sending shockwaves across the international security landscape. This act of aggression marked the most significant threat to European sovereignty since World War II. NATO, once seen by some as outdated, found itself urgently relevant again. The alliance immediately responded with unprecedented unity, providing military aid, intelligence support, training, and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine. Thousands of NATO troops were mobilized to reinforce the alliance's eastern flank, especially in countries bordering Russia and Ukraine. This war didn't just redraw battle lines, it redrew strategic thinking. For decades, Finland and Sweden had maintained a position of military neutrality, but as the threat from Russia grew dangerously close, both nations re-evaluated their stand. In 2023, Finland officially joined NATO, followed by Sweden in 2024, ending decades of non-alignment. This move significantly strengthened NATO's presence in the Nordic region, bringing greater security to the Baltic Sea and Northern Europe. In 2025, NATO held a historic summit in The Hague, where leaders set ambitious new goals for the future. The key highlights included a call for all members to spend at least 5% of their GDP on defense, a major increase from the previous 2% target, expanded investment in cybersecurity and hybrid warfare readiness, a renewed focus on military innovation, including the expansion of the NATO Innovation Fund. The Ukraine crisis redefined NATO's mission. No longer just a defense pact, NATO evolved into a global coalition for freedom, resilience, and innovation. It sent a clear message. The alliance is not only alive, it is evolving, expanding, and ready for any threat the future may bring. In NATO, rights come with responsibility, and security is not just about weapons, but about shared values, unity, and the will to stand together against rising threats. Being a member of NATO comes with powerful protection, but also serious responsibilities. At the core of the alliance is the principle of collective defense, enshrined in Article 5. If one member is attacked, all others come to its aid. This shared shield is what makes NATO so unique and effective. Every member, regardless of size, has an equal voice in decision, ensuring that all nations are treated as equals in shaping the alliance's direction. But rights come with duties. Each NATO country is expected to uphold democratic values, such as free elections, the rule of law, and civilian control over the military. These political standards are not just symbolic, they're foundational to NATO's identity. Economically and militarily, members are also required to contribute to the alliance's strength. One key obligation is to spend at least 2% of national GDP on defense. While not all countries have met this target consistently, the pressure to do so has increased, especially in light of recent global threats. And those threats are evolving fast. In today's world, NATO faces a new generation of security challenges. These include cyber attack, often state-sponsored and designed to target critical infrastructure. There's also a growing wave of disinformation campaigns, false narratives spread through media and social platforms to manipulate public opinion or destabilize democracies. Tensions with China are rising as it expands its global military and economic influence, challenging NATO's interests in technology, trade, and global governance. At the same time, conflicts in the Middle East, from terrorism to regional instability, continue to draw NATO's attention and resources. In this complex landscape, NATO's survival depends not only on weapons and troops, but on its unity, shared values, and the willingness of its members to adapt and act together. Beyond defense, NATO's global footprint has helped reshape the political and security landscape across Europe, Asia, and beyond. Over the past 75 years, NATO's role has evolved far beyond military defense. It has become a global force for peace, stability, and democratic reform. One of NATO's most significant achievements has been its role in ending ethnic conflict in the Balkans. In the 1990s, violent wars broke out in Bosnia and later Kosovo, leading to genocide, mass displacement, and regional instability. NATO intervened decisively, first through airstrikes, then by deploying peacekeeping forces to restore order, protect civilians, and uphold international law. Another major theater of NATO's global presence was Afghanistan. Following the 9/11 attack, NATO led the International Security Assistance Force, bringing together more than 50 nations to stabilize the country, build local security forces, and support reconstruction efforts. While the mission faced major obstacles, it represented the first time NATO operated outside Europe, proving its ability to respond to global threat. Beyond military act, NATO plays a vital role in supporting political reform and democratic institutions. For new and aspiring member states, joining NATO often means committing to free elections, civilian oversight of the military, judicial independence, and human rights protection. NATO encourages transparency, governance reforms, and modernization of defense institutions, helping countries transition from authoritarianism to democracy. It also facilitates joint military development, enabling member nations to train together, use interoperable equipment, and share intelligence, making collective defense faster and more effective. But NATO's global mission is not without controversies and challenges. Critics have raised concerns over burden share, where wealthier members like the U.S. bear a disproportionate share of cost. Others point to civilian casualties during operations in places like Afghanistan and Libya, raising questions about accountability. There are also internal policy disputes, particularly involving countries like Turkey and Hungary, which sometimes clash with NATO's core democratic values or foreign policy goals. Despite these issues, NATO's global impact remains profound. From the Balkans to Central Asia, it has saved lives, deterred war, and promoted peace. It continues to be a symbol of what international cooperation can achieve when values are shared and threats are faced together. As of the year 2025, NATO stands as a united alliance of 32 member nations, spanning North America and Europe, bound together by a shared commitment to collective security. As of the year 2025, NATO has grown to include 32 member states, forming a powerful military and political alliance that spans both North America and Europe. From its original 12 founding nations in 1949, the alliance has steadily expanded over the decades, welcoming both Cold War allies and former Eastern Bloc nations that transitioned to democracy. Today, NATO includes major global powers like the United States, United Kingdom, France, and Germany, alongside smaller yet strategically vital countries such as Estonia, Montenegro, and North Macedonia. The Nordic expansion brought Finland in 2023 and Sweden in 2024, adding strength to NATO's northern defenses and signaling a strong stand against Russian aggression. Together, these 32 nations form a diverse yet unified coalition, committed to collective defense, shared democratic values, and the pursuit of regional and global stability. Current list of NATO member states in 2025 is Albania, Belgium, Bulgaria, Canada, Croatia, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Iceland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Montenegro, Netherlands, North Macedonia, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, Turkey, United Kingdom, and United States. This wide-ranging membership brings together nations of different sizes, histories, and cultures, united by the belief that an attack on one is an attack on all. NATO's global reach is not just about forces, it's about the advanced defense industries and technology driving. NATO's strength isn't just about numbers, it's about technology, coordination, and innovation. Behind the alliance's global military power stand a few key contributors who supply the backbone of NATO's defense capability. At the top of the list is the United States, which provides the most advanced weapons systems, intelligence networks, and logistical infrastructure. U.S. contributions include fighter jets, surveillance aircraft, missile defense systems, cyber capabilities, and nuclear deterrent, making it the technological engine of NATO. The United Kingdom, France, and Germany are also critical suppliers. The UK contributes cutting-edge naval power, elite special forces, and cyber defense assets. France brings in sophisticated aircraft, drones, and artillery, as well as its independent nuclear force. Germany provides high-end armored vehicles, missile systems, and engineering support, strengthening Europe's land-based defense. Turkey, too, plays a vital role as NATO's second-largest military force. It offers not only manpower, but strategic location, drone technology, and regional logistics, connecting Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. To ensure these forces can work together seamlessly, NATO uses STANAGs, standardization agreements. These technical standards make sure that weapons, communication systems, equipment, and protocols are compatible across all member nations. This level of interoperability is what allows NATO to conduct joint operations smoothly and efficiently, no matter where in the world. Looking toward the future, NATO is heavily investing in defense innovation. The NATO Innovation Fund, launched in 2021, channels resources into developing cutting-edge military technologies such as AI, robotics, space defense, and next-generation communication. Alongside that is Diana, Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic, an initiative that supports startups and tech companies developing dual-use technologies that benefit both civilian life and military readiness. Together, these efforts ensure that NATO remains not just powerful, but smart, connected, and future-ready, prepared to meet threats of the 21st century and beyond.